Yeah, so I guess my first question, just kind of how quickly after Uvalde did all this begin to come together, and how did the discussions kind of begin?
That's a good question. The day after the Uvalde shooting, I said publicly that I will continue working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to try and solve this crisis and provide some peace of mind and security for families all across Arizona. And that very day, we set up our first meeting with the other three senators who are involved in these negotiations. We began meeting that very evening, and the meetings have been going on every day since then. As you know, we announced our agreement on Sunday, and we've been working furiously since then to hammer out the details, draft our legislation, and move it to the Senate for a vote next week.
And then in terms of getting the Republicans that happened to come on board, was there any almost like hesitancy or just kind of like a drawback in terms of trying to get them on board with this?
Well, the good news is that we expect that we'll have well over 60 votes to pass this bill in the Senate next week, which of course is the threshold for passage. When we announced our framework on Sunday, we had 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats together. Since then, we've increased the group size. So now we have 22 folks on record supporting this. And I anticipate that when we come to a vote next week, we'll be well over the 60 votes. And so it hasn't been a question of hesitancy. It's really been a question of us having the opportunity to talk with our colleagues and hear from them about the concerns that they're hearing from their constituents, and ensuring that our bill actually provides a holistic approach to restore family sense of safety, to keep our schools safe, to reduce the threats of violence, and of course, to save lives while also protecting the constitutional rights of Arizonans.
And then how important was it talking about kind of making it a little hard, maybe not harder, but, increasing some of the conversations and, restrictions around buying a gun under the age of 21? What were those conversations like, and how did those go?
Well, we've seen that many of these mass shooters are young men under the age of 21. And so we agreed very early on that we wanted to address the phenomenon of young people who aren't getting the mental health resources that they need. So that's one of the things that we've done in the legislation, is expand resources in schools to help kids grow and learn in safe environments, but also to make sure they can get help where they need it. We're also expanding mental health resources with more community behavioral health clinics and increasing access to telehealth services for rural communities. So really investing at the front end to make sure that we're helping kids who are struggling. And then on the other end, to make sure that we're cracking down on folks who maybe illegally sell or purchase guns. We want to make sure that the background check system is working effectively. And we want to include checking on things like juvenile criminal histories or mental health records. So ensuring that we're really figuring out who might be a danger to themselves or others, and making sure that we're also protecting the Second Amendment rights of our citizens.
And then how important was kind of fixing the boyfriend loophole for you? Because I know that's something that you've put work in on previously. So I'm just curious, what was the importance of that for you? And what was it like bringing that into the conversation as well?
Well, there's a lot of data that shows that these young mass shooters grow up in childhood trauma, which means they're facing really difficult situations growing up. And violence in a home or violence in relationships is trauma, and that can have a very, very negative impact on a young person's life. And so addressing some of the roots of that violence and that trauma through taking care of domestic violence issues by ensuring that we're convicting people who are engaging in this violent behavior towards loved ones is an important part of helping reduce that trauma that young people experience. It's an important part of the legislation, and I'm glad that we're, again, taking a holistic approach to this challenge that we face in our country.
And I know there's been certainly a group of people that have seen the things that you guys have been discussing and saying that maybe it's not quite enough. They would have liked to have seen a full-on ban on assault rifles, things of that nature. So I'm just curious, what do you say to that group of people who would still like to see a little bit more done?
Yeah, for almost 30 years, there's been no progress made on this issue because of political pressures that are coming from both sides of the political spectrum. And partisans in Washington have stood in the way of these meaningful solutions for nearly 3 decades. But folks in Arizona know me. I refuse to let Washington politics stop progress. I know that our plan will save lives. And I know that our plan will help keep Arizona families safe. And that's the most important thing to focus on right now, is saving lives, protecting the rights of Arizonans, and moving forward.